Hey everyone, this is John from EastCoastArmory.com, and I'm here today with the third and final chapter for this 1/16 scale radio-controlled command variant of the late production German Tiger I. If you're stumbling into this video for the first time, this video is the third and final installment on a three-part video series focused entirely on this build over here. The first chapter focuses on the build of this model, where we see what the model looked like at the beginning of the project, and I take you along throughout the model's construction, bring it up to the condition that we have here. The second installment focuses exclusively on the paint and the details that are seen on the model surface, and in this video here we're going to be taking the model out for a test drive where I go over all the RC functions and you get to see what this model looks like in operation. Obviously there's going to be a bunch of content coming right at you, so sit back and enjoy what you're going to see. Before we get started, I do want to mention that this model here was built for commission and belongs to a private collector. And as I often mention in these videos, I frequently take on commission build projects from models ranging between 1/35 scale and 1/6 scale. For availability and pricing information, that info would be best by reaching me through the email address listed below, which is info@EastCoastArmory.com. So with that out of the way, let's go ahead, take this model outdoors, and fire up the engine. So here's the model outdoors in my testing area, which if anyone's a frequent viewer of the channel, I want to say thank you for that, but also this should look very familiar to you because I tend to test run my larger and smaller scale models in this area. Anyway, the model, like I touched upon in the first installment of the video, under the hood it's all stock with the stock electronics and also with the stock steel ball bearing gearbox. This version here has the 360 rotating turret. However, I really don't recommend rotating the turret all 360 because of the command version. You do have those extra antennas in place, and obviously you will snag them with the barrel and cause damage. So for this one here, you really don't want to go ahead and rotate the turret to that degree. Also, this model here has the recoil and flash system as opposed to the airsoft function, which of course you'll see once I get the model started up. Before I get the model fired up, let's walk over through some of the other systems. So here we have under the driver's hatch the volume control knob. This is something that is stock with the kit, and it's a location that I personally really enjoy because on some of the earlier renditions of the Tiger I, they tend to be in the middle of the vehicle, which obviously makes it a little bit tricky trying to adjust the volume. The volume I always have set low, so I am going to have to adjust it prior to turning this model on, because in the shop, the loud noise tends to be a nuisance, so I tend to lower it a little bit during the construction and the testing phase of the model. Also on this location here, you can see the recharge jack has been pulled out. This is obviously to recharge the model without the need to disassemble it in order to charge up or top off the batteries. Because the model, you can see, is pretty detailed and also has this paint job on it, this is the type of thing that can easily be damaged or broken with constant removal of the upper hull from the lower, so it's always best to charge it remotely via the recharge jack that we have here. This is a component listed on the ECA product line. It's a drop-in installation in case anyone out there wants to make this upgrade to their own builds. When you're done with the recharge, you basically just take the cord, stuff it back inside the vehicle, and you're good to go. Moving to the opposite hatch, you can see some more of the switches. The little red switch over there is for the smoke system cutoff, and the large switch there is the main power switch. I do need to put a little bit of red paint on the various locations to indicate which position is in the on position. But that's something I could easily take care of after filming, so I'm not going to go too much into that. Oh, also behind the switches, you can see a black rubber tube. That is the smoke system refill for the same reasons that I touched upon in the first video, and also just now with the recharge jack, you can top off the smoke system if need be without the need to take the model apart. Before I go ahead, turn the model on and set the sound system, I might as well take the opportunity while it's still low to walk over some of the functions that the model has with the remote over here. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to turn the tank on, but of course the first thing you gotta do is turn on the radio, which once that's on, I can go ahead and turn on the tank. Once the tank is powered on, you hear that small little fan in operation, and you have the headlight here blinking. To power the tank on, that's done with this switch over here. By pulling it forward, it's going to actuate the sound system. And I wasn't kidding when I said I had the sound system set to really, really low. But again, this is going to be taken care of right after I'm done walking over what the functions are. So this toggle here is purely for driving. Up, down, left, right, neutral steer, all that's done with this here. The system does have proportional drive. If I ease into it, you can see it, as opposed to full throttle, like we have right there. The sound system does have a revving type effect. However, this is something that is, people out there like to claim, is not nearly as good as some of the other aftermarket systems. And also one thing about the sound system is that if you give it a little bit of throttle, just to the point where the gearbox starts rotating, the sound system does not change files at that point. It's always when you give it a little bit more throttle is when the sound card will actuate with that effect. This is, again, something that will probably be better achieved with an aftermarket system. So if that is something that you're looking for your build, perhaps something like an L-Mod or a Clark might be more to your needs. But for this build here, like I stated, the stock system should work just fine. In addition to the toggle, this little knob over here is for the trim, so you can actually adjust how much one track rotates according to the other. This is something that sometimes needs to be adjusted, but it's within like a few seconds you can figure it out and get the thing running in a straight line. On this toggle over here, this is purely your turret function, so left and right take care of the rotation. Down is purely just the elevation and depress. It works on a track as what's commonly seen on many of these RTR 116s out there, where the barrel will go down and then it'll just rise up again and go in that type of a motion. Going up on the toggle here is the animation for the main 88, which has the flash, the recoil, and a little jitter, which is another thing that people tend to not like too much on the stock systems. But for this one here, again, what you see is what the stock setup has. The other thing that's on here is this toggle switch, which is for the MG. And you hit that and you have a little blinky LED and fiber optic found in the bow gun area, which you'll be able to see in better light if I move the camera. On the rear portion, here you can see the smoke system in actuation. I'm not sure if this one has the smoke system tied into the throttle where it goes faster or slower, depending how much throttle you give it, because this is an older unit that's found on this model. And I believe this was something that was changed on the newer ones, but I think this one might have that capability. But we'll see once the model is in actual function. One other thing to mention, function-wise, is that underneath the loader's hatch here, there is a kill switch for the main barrel animation. You want to make sure that that is left in the on state, or else you'll be actuating the radio and nothing will be happening in terms of the main firing animation. On the airsoft one, that system is also present, but obviously that's done to terminate the airsoft firing function in case you don't want to have it go off prematurely. Okay, so that's it with the function. So now I'm going to go ahead, crank up the sound system, and then I'm going to take this model on its paces. So let's see if this works. Oop, obviously that kills it. Well, this is definitely a first. As you can clearly see, the last outer section of the rear wheel popped off. Fortunately, I was able to track it down in the front yard over here and was able to obtain it. So I'm going to go ahead and quickly get this repaired, and then we could continue with the test run. Okay, so the glue has been added, so I'm going to make this brief. Before I install it, I want to touch upon the weathering added to the outer rim. As I mentioned in the other video, paint was added in these sections over here, but I mentioned that after the model gets driven, it's going to start wearing in these areas, and it's going to leave for a more realistic look. Well, now that the model has a little bit of mileage on it, you can see the wear that's starting to develop on the rim here of the wheel. And as I mentioned before, it really does have a nice little patina going to it, and this will only improve as the model is driven over time. But let me go ahead and get the wheel mounted in place before the glue's set to a certain point where I can get the piece reinstalled. Alright, so I'll go ahead and let the super glue set, and then we can get this thing running again. Well, I think it's safe to say that that test run was a success. Even though we did have that small little hang-up earlier of the wheel popping off, this was something that was easily fixed and is actually the reason why I do test runs like this. So by the time the model gets to its destination, these little hiccups should be ironed out. After looking at the model in more depth, I saw what caused the wheel to do what it did. It's a combination of two things. First, the amount of glue applied by the manufacturer wasn't all that great, so the piece was held together, but was basically more or less just barely hanging on. The second thing, what caused it, was the track disrailing. You see, when I was driving on the asphalt, we had some of these small little pebbles here get lodged into the keyway here on the track where it makes contact with the sprocket, and also in that gap that's present in between the two sections on the rear idler wheel. Well, this caused the track to skip, and when it skipped, it added extra pressure to the last wheel and thus plucked it off. Before I went ahead and grabbed the adhesive, I looked at the track, removed any of those little pebbles that remained, remounted the track to its appropriate location, and then I proceeded to remount on the wheel. Only this time I used a little bit more adhesive compared to what the manufacturer originally applied when they first built the model. Outside of the wheel hang-up, the suspension performed absolutely perfectly. You really get to appreciate those ball bearings that are installed on these metal wheels, and in my opinion, it does make the tank run a little bit smoother. The metal track, of course, is bomb-proof. I've said it before and I'll say it again. The Taigen 1/16 scale Tiger track are the best on the market, and it's one of the things that I recommend even applying to the other Tiger ones in 1/16, be it from Tamiya, Matto, or Henlong, because they do have the best tracks of all the manufacturers that I just mentioned. The model's runtime was also very, very good. This is down to the battery that was utilized. Of course, the stock battery was replaced with a 5,000 milliamp battery from the vendor that's listed below in the video description. I've used this manufacturer's batteries on a number of my builds over the years, and without fail, they always perform absolutely perfectly. Even on some of those older builds, I've been running them around from time to time, and they hold voltage very well and recharge without any problems. Once the batteries are recharged, the runtime is basically on par to where it was originally when the battery was brand new. So again, I cannot recommend those batteries enough. They are a real simple addition to make, and it's an easy way to enhance the performance on any of your RC tank models without doing any extra work. Even if you want to leave the model totally stock, I strongly recommend dropping in one of those batteries, and your runtime will definitely increase. One other thing I want to mention is that there were occasions when I was running this model specifically off-road where the MG was popping off. This has to do with the fact that the MG is not currently glued on at this point in time. As I touched upon in the other video, the MG is not glued on because the model still needs to be shipped to its location, and obviously something like this would be best left off in this configuration, and then once it makes it to its destination, the owner can then apply the glues as he deems necessary. Same is also true for some of the antennas. They were popping off when the tank was bouncing around in some really rough terrain. However, unlike the MG, I do not recommend gluing the antenna wires in place, and these are best left in a removable manner for shipping and even just for general handling. Well, at the end of the day, I'm really happy in how this build turned out, and so is the customer. He's seen pictures already of the finished model and is in absolute love with it. So clearly I did my job very well. This is so far the second Tiger Ace build that I've done in this scale and in radio control. The first one was done a year or two ago from filming this video, and that was Autocarius's mid-production Tiger I. So, you know, here we have another German tank ace model under my belt. The model itself, although I've done several examples already of the late production Tiger I and even a command variant of this exact same type of vehicle in the past, it's always enjoyable to work on one of these Taigens, and they do polish up extremely well and can be turned into something that's very, very nice. Normally at this point in the video, I would go over the skill level recommendation for a model like this. However, since this isn't the first nor second, possibly even third late production Taigen Tiger I that I've done a video on, I've already went over all that information to great extent in those other videos. However, in a nutshell, in my opinion, the Taigen late production Tiger I, or just the Taigen Tiger Is in general, are phenomenal. They are probably the best option out there on the market right now for a 1/16 scale radio controlled Tiger I, be it an early, a mid, or a late. These Taigen models over here basically bridge the gap between the Henlong example and also the example from Tamiya. The Tamiya model does have better surface detailing compared to the stock out-of-the-box Taigen. However, it costs far more money compared to the Taigen example, and that model is only a early production Tiger I example. The Henlong example is very cheap and affordable. It does run fairly well. However, the model does have several inaccuracies on it, as when Henlong made that model, they basically took the Tamiya Tiger I and watered it down in order to meet a certain low-end price point, and the model does suffer from that. The Taigen is basically, like I stated before, in the middle. You have improved detailing compared to the Henlong, as Taigen basically took the Henlong, polished it up, and gave it several Tamiya-ish features, like the die-cast torsion bar suspension, which is something that you generally see on the Tamiya. However, the models are much more affordable than the Tamiya, where they retail anywhere between $300 to about $400 or $500, as opposed to the Tamiya that starts at about $1,500. The Taigen also is a model that you can get in the all three Tiger I configurations, from early, mid, to late. The Henlong example is a early production tank, as is the Tamiya one. If you wanted to take a Henlong and upgrade it, chances are really good you're going to be pumping a lot of Taigen parts into it in order to get up to similar condition. While with a Taigen, you basically start at that point from the get-go, so it's actually better in that regard. The Tamiya example, you can also pump those same exact details onto the Tamiya model in order to transform it into either a mid or a late tank. But again, you're going to be spending even more money now on an already expensive model, and that really depends on the builder's budget and also their needs. The Taigen example, it's fantastic. You can either buy it and use it as a beater model, run around with it, have fun with the model just out of the box in stock configuration, or you can do what I do with it and use it as a platform to super detail and customize it to basically any configuration that you want. And these models are fantastic for that because of all the availability of parts and also the affordability of the base starter model and the affordability of the said components. Something else that I should address, because if I don't, I'm pretty sure I'm going to be hearing about it in the comment section if it hasn't already been mentioned at this time, and that is the other viable example for a 1/16 scale Tiger I that's on the market, and that option is from Matto. The Matto Tiger I comes in two flavors, where it's in early production or a late production format, and the model comes in at a bridging price point where it's slightly more expensive than this example here, but it's still more affordable compared to the Tamiya counterpart. That model's number one selling point is its material. That model is 100% made from metal, and for some people out there, this is a huge selling point, and it's something that they prefer. I will say that the vehicle being made out of metal, the popularity is more or less for personal preference more than anything else. However, it is still a viable option. The Matto's metal construction is of die cast. It's not like an Armor Tech or anything where it's all flat plate that you bolt together. The vehicle is more or less a die cast version of the Henlong example. And just like with the Taigen over here, the Henlong's inaccuracies, several of them made their way and transitioned over to the Matto's tooling. Now, this isn't something that's a deal breaker. However, you do have to keep in mind that because of some of these inaccuracies, they will need to be addressed. The difference, though, or I should say the reason why I prefer the Taigens over the Mattos, is because of the construction material of the two examples. With the components on the plastic edition here that need to be addressed, these are easily deleted with several types of procedures that I go over in part 1 of this series. With the Matto, the same procedures can still be utilized. However, it is going to be a little bit more of a complication compared to the plastic counterpart, because grinding off these components made in solid metal puts a lot more wear and tear on the tools compared to doing it in plastic. However, it's still obviously something that can be done, but it is something to be aware of. One other thing I want to mention is that, in my opinion, the Taigen has the superior track and sprocket compared to not just the Matto, but even the Henlong and the Tamiya for that matter. Fortunately, all these components can be found on the market and are cross-platform, so you can upgrade all three of these examples with the components that I just mentioned. But again, this will add to the cost, and this is something that the owner or the builder does need to contemplate. And with that, that wraps up this 3-part video series on the 1/16 scale radio-controlled late production command variant of the German Tiger I. If you like this video, be sure to subscribe to this channel where it's a great way to keep up to date on new posted content, being 1/16 scale model showcase videos like this one over here, or the other smaller scale and larger scale model showcase videos and project update videos that frequently get posted to this channel. Another way to keep in the loop of new posted content is by liking us on Facebook. There, I have more photographs of this particular build, as well as the other smaller and larger scale builds that have been seen on this channel in the past. Furthermore, don't forget to swing by eastcoastarmory.com for more 1/6 and 1/16 scale builds and detail components. Thanks again, and I'll be seeing you all again on the next one. Till then.